When I came back from 6 months underwater, my skin looked different, fresh air smelled disgusting, sunlight hurt my eyes, and my clothes smelled that bad I didn't take them home with me. I was only 18 years old when I surfaced after spending over 160 days submerged on a Royal Navy nuclear submarine as a marine engineer submariner. This was me before patrol, and this was me after 6 months of no sunlight, no fresh air, and clearly no haircut either. Imagine trying to wash that trim in a 16-second shower. I remember I ran out of shampoo and conditioner late into patrol. I came out of the shower and my crewmate just stared at my head and laughed. It hurt my feelings a bit, but it did look like I had a hedgehog on my head. Now, there was a guy on board who became the dedicated barber for everyone, but I just wasn't risking getting given a dead trim. My skin was also so pale when I got back. I looked like a ghost. This was a selfie I took when I got back home, and then this was my full body before and my full body after the patrol. Going from a 24-hour day to a 6-hour on, 6-hour off routine completely destroys your body clock, and being surrounded by artificial light constantly removes the concept of day and night, but it doesn't matter. The only thing that does matter is your next 6 hours. Now, a mixture of the constant lighting that doesn't change, living the same day every day because the routine barely changes, and the sleep deprivation because you're doing 6 hours on, 6 hours off. Realistically, you're not getting more than 5 hours of sleep, and that's if you're lucky. That's if an emergency drill doesn't wake up the entire submarine and, wakes you up mid-sleep. Time starts to blur and the days blend together because nothing really changes. You just kind of, I remember walking down the corridor once doing rounds, checking my watch, and what felt like 3 seconds later, I checked it again, and 3 days had gone by. I was like, what is going on in my head? I don't think deep sleep really exists in that type of routine because, don't get me wrong, I'd go to my rack and I'd fall asleep like a baby. But no matter how much you sleep, you just constantly feel exhausted. You get a lot of brain fog, and I remember just walking into compartments and being like, what am I even here for? Why have I came here? Now, I've mentioned the fact that later on in patrol, it kind of roles reverse, and instead of the time speeding up and the days going by fast, the days go slower. And I feel like people don't really understand why that is. Maybe I haven't explained it properly, but my patrol's only meant to be around 2 months. And, when you're expecting to come home after 2 months, but then it ends up being 6 months, after you get past that 60-day mark and you're still there, you're still underwater as the days go by, time just slows down. It feels like it isn't moving at all. Can you imagine being in an airport? You're about to board your flight, but then there's an announcement that says, yeah, your flight's not going for another 18 hours. Now, that's minuscule compared to what I have to deal with, but it's the same sort of concept where you go from the mindset of living daily life to all of a sudden you're waiting and you're just counting down the hours on the clock, and it seems like it's moving slower than ever, and every day it goes by, it moves even slower. Honestly, psychologically, it's pretty horrible to go through. Now, the submarine has a very distinct smell: recycled air, metal, oil, amine, and it doesn't just go into your clothes, it sticks onto your skin to the point where when you get back, you stink. And obviously, all the personal clothes I brought, I just ended up binning. There's no way I'm bringing them back. That's not going to wash off in the washing machine. I'm going to talk about the social aspect, right? you can be mates with someone on day one, and by the end of the patrol, you can despise them. You cannot want to look in their direction. You cannot want to talk to them. Now, put 130 people in a tin metal can underwater. I'm sure you guys have some friends, someone you talk to every now and then. Now, imagine spending every day eating, showering, living with them for 6 months underwater. You can imagine there's something that they're going to say that's going to piss you off, or vice versa. But obviously, the banter down there is great. It's the only thing that does get you through it. There's a lot of humour in the mess. You go in there on your own watches, and it does cheer you up. Everyone does help each other get through it. But that's not to say that there are some people on board that do piss you off and you're like, I don't want to ever see you ever again after this patrol. But that's, I wouldn't say that's harsh, I'd just say that's realistic. And on the flip side of that, because you're seeing the same people every single day, when you do get back and you see somebody that isn't part of the crew, it genuinely feels like they're an alien. Because I remember first-hand experience when someone came down the submarine on the first day that we docked, I looked at them and I was like, who are you? Because it feels extremely weird for your brain to see someone that you haven't seen the past 6 months. It's very, very weird. One of the biggest factors that contributes to low morale on board is the lack of contact with the outside world. Now, we're not allowed to contact the outside world at all, but we do get one tiny piece of paper per week or two from family. And we also do get weekly news, so stuff like UFC results, football results, sports, all that good stuff. And obviously, if there is any world breaking news, it will most likely be on there. But yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that gets people down on patrol, if they either miss a family gram, or, you know, we had one lad on mine who just didn't receive one for a few weeks and he thought his family had abandoned him. You know, it really does get to you, and especially down there in those circumstances, you know, you don't even get to step outside and breathe fresh air. Or just, obviously, there is no windows on a submarine, let's get that out of the way. So people do go, you know, a little bit crazier than usual, and obviously, you know, especially in the mess, like, you've got loads of men together in a high testosterone environment. There is going to be, like, snappy, people are going to snap, do you know what I mean? Arguments will happen, but nothing crazy happened on my patrol. Talking about high testosterone environments, there was no women on my patrol, and obviously, you know, not pretty much forgetting what women look like for the entire 6 months, and you just, you know, you got like Dua Lipa, Doja Cat, Madison Beer just on the TV constantly, music videos, dancing. You know, people do just stare in awe, drooling pretty much. That's how pretty desperate it gets. At the start of patrol, we were eating a lot of food. It was good food as well. We were having like 3 breakfasts in the morning. We were having full English breakfast, porridge, cereal, and then a big lunch, big dinner. You know, loads of RTBs, which is basically like, it's not return to base. It's basically just extras that are left over after dinner. But as patrol went on, fresh food gone, tin food, more of that, space food, more of that. Space food's basically like dried up tins of mystery meat, and it was the most disgusting thing I've ever put in my mouth in my entire life. But yeah, as the patrol went on, the days went on, food rationing crept in more and more and more, and at the start of patrol I actually gained a bit of weight from food. But by the end, I actually lost most of it, to be honest, because, you know, we weren't eating that much food, to be fair. We were getting fed, but like, your stomach was rumbling every day. Another thing that does get to you is the lack of privacy. You know, you're sleeping in rooms at 9, you're going into the mess, there's like 15 people in there, and you can barely get time alone. The only place you can really kind of be alone is in the toilet stall. And even then, you get a bit of privacy and a bit of, you know, thinking space to yourself. There's a guy next to you having a shit. Do you know what I mean? You don't have those shit particles coming through your nose while you're trying to have a bit of time to yourself. Now, I'd say the most shocked I was on deployment was we had this lad in the mess and he just completely fainted out of nowhere. And we were like, what's going on with him? And he ends up pissing black. He had like kidney stones and stuff. And we do have a doctor on board, but obviously what they can do is very limited. So he was kind of lying in sick bay for a few weeks. And eventually, thank God, he did get better. So, you know, nothing crazy had to happen. Another thing which I haven't really seen people talk about is that when you're actually on the submarine, there is no silence. It doesn't exist. There's always a constant low hum of machinery or washing machines spinning. Now, where I was sleeping on board, I was right next to the washing machines. And you just hear them spinning all the time. It didn't stop me falling asleep like a baby, but eventually when I did get back, I was just lying in my own bed at home in Liverpool. I was just lying in silence, and the silence was louder than anything that could have been thrown at me on board, whether it be machinery or anything. So, you know, I actually started playing washing machine noises on YouTube to fall asleep faster. And even nowadays, I've got like noise cancellation headphones that play like a little hum that kind of simulates the machinery that you get, the low hum on board. And that does help me go to sleep better, to be honest. On the submarine, like, the corridors are so tight, it's one person at a time. Like, you can't walk down the corridor if someone's coming at you have to wait, or vice versa. And there's some compartments on board that you can't even stand up fully in. You can't even, like, 3/4 stand up. You have to crouch. Like, you genuinely have to crouch and sprint around the compartment. Obviously not sprint, because that'd be dangerous. So you wouldn't do that, would you? But, you know, it's pretty mad. Now, a few things, that being back in public, you know, just there being crowds was crazy. Just going into a shop and being able to actually buy something and use money is pretty mad. That patrol and what I went through may sound pretty rough, but if I've learned anything from that, it's just that if you persist, no matter what, no matter how much suffering you're going through or how dark the period of your life is, there will always be light at the end of the tunnel. And no matter what, even if you can't see it, even if you don't know how you're going to get there, you will always get there, no matter what, as long as you just persist and you believe in yourself.